Hi folks, my name is Lee Norman Mehler. I wrote this piece for my friend Doug McKenna, whose father was Dave McKenna, a world-renowned jazz pianist. I hope you enjoy what we have created. His name is Horace West. Percival West is his father. The sacred monument stands against the wall in the spare bedroom. The upright Baldwin Hamilton piano sets off the wall 8 inches, so the music reflects into the room and into every corner of the house. Horace and the other children are allowed in the room when their father grants his permission.
That room was supposed to be mine. I'm saying this for the record, if anyone is listening. The Baldwin Hamilton was the dominant icon in the room. The dark stained oak finish stood out against the light gray walls and the white bookcases full of sheet music, long playing albums, and photo books. When you flipped up the wood keyboard cover, it revealed a door to another world. My father could transform those idle ivory and black keys into a magical sound ranging from the jarring, discordant din of the subways below the street to the smooth, silky sounds of the angels playing above. My dad, Percival West, was a large man with a gentle touch. His big, soft hands had long, tapered fingers that could span 11 keys, more than any other piano player I ever knew. He had an ear for hearing things differently than most mortals, and his fingers moved as if each one had its own instinct. The notes that came off the Baldwin soundboard was not of this world.
Stacy was Horace's wife of 20 years. She quietly lets Horace talk uninterrupted. She knew him well enough to sense when to shut up.
Do you know what it's like growing up with a father who's been declared a genius by everyone he touches?
Stacy could see the years etched in Horace's face. The skin wrinkled around his eyes as he squinted, looking back at the past. His bushy mustache took over as he bit his lower lip. She knew he would rewind his life and be mired in a bog of self-criticism that paled by comparison. But he'd come back to the present and his complicated reality if she just let him talk. It was better to be doing this in their sunny living room surrounded by soft, overstuffed cushions, rather than the hard seat at the local bar where he usually hung out. Horace had not had a drink for a month. He had just gotten his chip the day before at the meeting. Now he needed to review things again.
Dad wasn't a major asshole about his gift, just a minor one. He didn't know he was acting different. He would spend hours hunched over the Baldwin, composing and writing down melodies that came into his head at all hours of the day or night. He would leave the room without notice or saying a word, as if he were going to a fire, sometimes in mid-sentence. Dad heard the world different than others. He could absorb the sounds of life and the wind through the trees, the traffic on a summer day, or the high-pitched clatter of vendors on the street. It's not that he didn't try in his awkward way. I remember him pulling me up on his knee when I was 8 to explain the mechanics of a piano.
This is a complex instrument with 88 keys and hammers striking strings and dampers and pedals, but none of that really means a damn. It's the soul of the man sitting in the seat coaxing the sounds to emerge that matters. It is all dead unless you are alive.
We got used to the great Percival West's absence. Mom would continue the conversation without him, hardly missing a beat. Their communication was in a different language, much like the jazz that Dad was famous for. Everything was slightly askew, off kilter. They fought hard and lived hard, verbally punched and counterpunched with ideas and concepts that we kids couldn't understand. As we grew up, he supported what we aspired to be as long as it was in the arts. But he was MIA many times when we needed a parent. Mom tried to fill in, but with a brood of 6, she was spread thin. Dad's music was mostly improvised, as was his life. He wasn't really unfaithful to our mother or his children, except he had a mistress named Jazz. If he wasn't slumped over the keyboard in the room down the hall, we knew he was at the Club Russo downtown.
The Club Russo was in the middle of the 200th block on Main Street. It was the last original storefront. Formerly a speakeasy in the 20s, Max Peterson had saved it from the wrecking ball and bought it for 10 cents on the dollar at auction. He restored the old brick and stucco shell to its original glory, with music rolling out onto the street every night through open shutters that lured you inside.
On special occasions or holidays, we kids could sit at the back of the club for the first set. We could make out the ghost of our father in the corner of the stepped-up stage through the blue smoke. Sonny Jenkins was on the bass. He was skinny and seemed to curl himself around the instrument that was 6 inches taller than he was. His sound rumbled under your seat and filled the dark corners of the room. Pete Cochran was behind the drums and constantly in syncopated motion. He never missed a beat or a wordless cue from my father. I think he slept with those drumsticks. His hair was graying and his joints were aching. Josiah Peterson was the fourth wheel of the well-oiled machine they called the West Quartet. Josiah could play anything that required long wind and a soft touch. His trumpet reached highs and lows that were hard to comprehend. Josiah was round and sweaty after just the first few notes. But Percival West was the glue that held this tight group together, no matter where the melody led them, on the stage or around the city.
Horace is silent for a moment. His face changes as the memories pass before his eyes in an instant. He is no longer smiling.
I couldn't play a note. Dad's body language expressed his disappointment. I developed my own fantasy world through acting and singing. I would escape the loneliness by being others. It frustrated my father that I had no interest singing jazz or blues. I found my home in Broadway show tunes. Dad spent the hours after midnight with his buddies Dave McKenna or Charles Mingus or Thelonious Monk. At that hour, I was in bed wanting to be Richard Burton or Robert Preston or Rex Harrison or Gordon McRae. I was the oldest and the first one to go to college. My gift to go on stage unafraid, consume a role and connect with an audience gave me a thrill even when I was young. I played with the idea of investing my soul into characters who were not me when I was in school. I approached my father and mother with the possibility of pursuing this love before high school. We set a goal of earning enough to pay for a large chunk of my additional education. Mom worked overtime, and I took on as many spare time jobs and summer gigs as I could. We knew Dad could not save much from his meager earnings as a musician, but preserving his artistic drive was always deemed more important by the family. I went to the state college with a decent acting school. I flourished under the wing of a professor who thought I had that undefined something to make it. But he was wrong. I was in the majority of people who don't make a living at what they love. I had minor successes at college and local productions that fed my need for expression and were an outlet for emotional connection. But all were fleeting, never added up to what my father had hoped for. I gravitated to the classics, which is another way to not make a living in acting. Shakespeare and classic musicals are seldom paths to glory unless you live in an age of revivals. But I am who I am. You don't choose what or who you fall in love with all the time. Sometimes the love chooses you, unannounced. And then there's Stacy. We were in a local revival of Oklahoma as part of the supporting cast the summer of 1969. As Laurie and Curly performed their duets, we were stage left doing our best to blend into the scenery and harmonize with the chorus. During the second act ensemble song, The Farmer and the Cowman, we were paired off and touched hands. There was something electric when we looked deeply into each other's eyes, as directed by the choreographer. By the final reprise of Oklahoma, our lives were linked beyond the stage. It was a mutual love by the second act. She's been my leading lady in search of an Act 3 for all these years. She does her best to keep me focused whenever I want to improvise too much.
Stacy is trying to let Horace take the lead. So, are you going to see him? Time is running out.
I'm not sure what to do or say.
Percival West had been slowed by a stroke. He had persevered through the many ailments that had threatened to pull him away from the piano. The arthritis had eaten away at his dexterity the last few years, but this minor stroke had caught him by surprise. Horace heard about it from his middle brother, Seth. Dad has been hiding it for a while. We're not sure how long he has. Probably a good idea to come now rather than later.
Stacy and I stopped at the lower step of the front porch with the peeling whitewash paint. The pair of old rockers was still there, but one seemed smaller since Mom passed. Dad had let the house go the last few years. There were terracotta pots lining the porch with huska plants beyond recognition. What am I going to say, Stacy?
She did not answer right away, waiting a moment to allow the ghosts of this place to help find the words. Just speak from the heart. Let the last few years fade away, and remember when you both were looking for your own answers, when the hurt didn't matter.
We go up the 3 steps through the creaking screen door and push the heavy carved oak door open. Stacy sits on the bench seat in the entrance hall with a high ceiling. A few lonely chords escape the room at the rear, buffeted by the flow of the stale heated air. My head is full of stanzas of unwritten melodies. I turn the corner and stop again when I see Dad leaning over the keys. His right hand lingers, but his left hand moves easily to complete an ethereal phrase that would not come from his now silent lips. Time skips a beat, but his music does not. The air is suddenly lighter, and the sun streams in as it emerges from behind a cloud. I know what to say.